Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be welcoming AJ Kohn to the program. He's the owner of Blind 5-Year-Old, super respected SEO, one of my favorite SEOs out there in terms of his thinking, no nonsense, no bullshit, no cuss words intended, thought process. So AJ consults for very large B2C startups, many of which are public that you probably use on a daily basis. Your wife maybe uses on a daily basis. So there's some in there that you might have heard of, but I appreciate you coming on, AJ.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So AJ, we've run in some similar circles, had similar clients over the years, and definitely you've had some great, you might cringe at it, thought leadership at some different SEO points on things that are happening and evolving and changing our landscape from a search standpoint. So one of the things you pointed out to me is you're seeing something recently that feels like a threat to what we're doing to SEO. Maybe you wouldn't go as far as to say SEO is dead, but what is that big threat? What are you sort of experiencing on the front lines?
Uh, yeah, I would say the biggest threat, unfortunately, to SEO is lack of throughput. Um, it is clients not willing to do enough SEO work. Um, they do a lot of prioritization. They want to talk about how much a certain uh, optimization is going to bring them. But when it comes to actually putting rubber to the road, there's a lot less work going through the pipeline. And at the end of the day, you just simply have to do more work, put more work out there, do more. And that's usually what wins. I had a client that I've been with for 10 years. And at a certain point, my contact said, can you put together a prioritization of things you think we should be working on? And I finally was like, no. And he was like, what do you mean no?
This is what wasted my time.
I was like, yeah, that's what I said. I said, I've done this for like the last 2 years and you haven't done anything. He said, okay, I understand that. We have a good relationship, right? So I could be a little bit more direct with him. And he's like, yeah, I know, but what should we do first? Like, well, I need the priorities. And I was like, no, you don't. Like, I don't care what you do. Just do something. Like, honestly, I don't care. Do whatever you can, get it done. And, on his part, he took it to heart, reorganized some things internally, got a better project manager for that team, and suddenly things started to get done. We finally got a couple of projects really out the door, and they're up 80% year over year this year.
Funny how that works.
Funny how it works, right? Like you actually do the work and do the things and put it out in the field, and you get that back. It's just not what I see a lot of clients doing at this point. There's a lot of fear, about, well, what if that happens? What if this happens? And that dovetails directly into measurement, which, I'm probably not the probably the most hated person in terms of A/B testing, because I have pretty much come out and said I think most of it is garbage. Not a fan, because it's turned into this, right? Well, let's do an A/B test. A/B test is neutral. Well, then I guess we shouldn't do it. It's just it's really difficult. Or it's negative 1%. Oh, that can't push that out, right? It's really difficult in those environments to try and educate a team to sort of understand that that's not really how SEO works. You might not even be measuring the thing that you think you're measuring. It's a really tough environment right now. People are measuring here when they should be measuring like way out farther. And I always ask people, when you have a algorithm update and suddenly you're up, and I go, so like, how do you tie that together, right? Like, that's something you're like, oh, well, and sometimes they ask, well, what did we do that made that happen? And I'm like, a whole bunch of things. Um,
Yeah.
I, at the end of the day, people have a real hard time with the concept that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's really what it comes down to. SEO, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, but people continue to measure the parts, um, and that's the main problem right now.
What do you think is causing that lack of throughput? Is it the economy, right? Is that a factor? Like where if this new thing, where do you think that theme is coming from?
I think it is. I don't know. Being an old person at this point in this industry, I think it's the level of maturity that people are at. There's a lot less cowboy out there. Um, I had a client who scared me early on and actually kind of taught me this, where I made a pretty big recommendation, and they're like, "Okay, we'll do it." And I was like, "What do you mean you're going to do it?" They're like, "Well, we'll just do it." I said, "Okay, but you realize I'm telling you to like redirect, literally millions of URLs and do some." It was a pretty crazy thing. It was the right thing to do, and it worked. But at the time, I was like, "Man, this could go really
Hmm.
wrong."
Yeah.
Right? Um, and their response was like, "If it doesn't work, we'll roll back." Right? They were cowboys, and it worked, and we learned really quick. And that's the other thing that happens when you're in an environment where, uh, if I had to really put everything on it, there's a lot of assigning of blame in the last couple years, in my opinion, that people are very fearful that, you know, if SEO goes down, I'm going to get blamed for it. And then what happens? Now, maybe that is economic and people are scared to lose their jobs. But um, I find, for me, I'm always like, look, some things are going to work, some things are not. And a lot of these organizations, they don't feel like they can lose, right? Which is just not a good place to work if you're,
Trying to do
trying to
something
put
new.
stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's I think a fair observation. Do you think that ties in, or I guess one thing I'm generally curious about, and maybe this is where your frustration came. Are most of your clients, or were they doing frequent like SEO A/B testing? Is that kind of a more common thing in house?
But let me back up and say, when I first started, maybe 8 years ago, I was like, we need to do A/B testing, right? I was all for it, right? I was like, we got to test this stuff. And part of my realization was in working with this client who built a best of breed A/B testing solution. Was when you started to look at the wins and then look at, like, okay, if we add up all the wins and then we look at our total SEO growth, something is not adding up here, right? Like, if we add up all our SEO wins, we should be up like 300%, but we were only up like 68%. Now, 68% is great, right? No, I'm not going to, that's a fine thing, particularly at the scale that we were at. But it became abundantly clear that we were not actually measuring what we thought we were measuring. And it was soon after that I saw a graph from, I think it was Luke W, who was a Googler, who basically said, like, here's the conversion rate up to that. Here's, and it was basically the same thing. It was like, here's what it should be if all of the tests that you ran said were good, and here's what it actually is. And I was like, okay, like, it's not just me looking at this. And you start to poke at it. So a lot of it came from that, and I still have a few clients who are kind of doing this. I've turned a couple of those from a uh, data driven to a data informed in culture. I can't take credit for it. There's a an article out there about
Mm,
this
I
that
like
I
that.
read, and I was like, yes. And they basically said, a data driven culture is you run a test, the test says X, you do Y, right? Like, it's data driven and you're not using anything. Data informed will be, we run the test and then we use some, you know, other knowledge, some other sort of expertise to analyze it, contextualize it, understand what's going on, and then make an informed decision. And so I have turned a couple of clients from they're doing A/B tests, and it's no longer, it was 2% negative. That means we don't push it. Instead, we go, okay, it's 2% negative now. I've told most clients anything that is plus or minus within plus or minus 10 is basically a neutral. Um, Over time, I find that it just gravitates towards the mean. Uh, and so we're usually looking for either big wins or big losses, um, and or looking at the impact on user experience, right? How did that change impact, the number of people who get to this type of page, or the number of people who follow through and do and convert, those types of things, which are important for SEO. And so I'm happy to measure those things. But in general, it's more those companies do the tests to sort of see what the results are, but are not barring the deploy. So -2, still think it's a good SEO idea, think we'll be rewarded in the next update, push it. Um, and so that has worked. Still slows things down. Still rather
Yeah.
just,
Not
I'd
test it.
still
Yeah.
rather just take more swings. Still rather take more swings, but at least we're not sort of coming up with great ideas, having them turn out to be like marginally negative, and then not launch them.
Do you have an example without sharing the client of like what is a thing you did that you just knew as an SEO was a right thing and it was sort of negative and you still pushed it?
Um, One of the things that I do most frequently on category results pages is bring the descriptive text from the detail page onto the results on that category page. Basically, putting a lot more relevant text on the category page by putting it in like a quick view or whatever type of sort of interaction that you want to look at. Um, and, you know, uh, did that. I know it works. I've seen it work numerous times. I know it's the right thing to do, and I think it tested -1% when it first rolled out. Um, and I was like, okay, like, don't care, still the right thing to do, right? I know it's going to work. I had another client at one point where they literally did not have crosslinks on their pages. Um, and the user experience team was like, well, we're not sure how people will like these crosslinks,
Do you
so
mean
we have to
could you
test it.
define that? Is that you mean internal links?
Like literally internal links to other pages on the site.
Got it. Yeah.
Like literally, they had it was like you reach a page, and like that was it. There was no
Way to get out.
links to similar pages or whatever. And the user experience team was like, well, we're not sure how that's going to impact our experience. And I was like, the page is like, this is
Orphaned.
bad. This is bad for everybody. Like this is just like you done missed something, right? Like
Yeah.
this is just you messed up, right? I don't know how you got there, but you messed up. And it was an odd thing that they had to test. And then suddenly, when we put it there, I mean, it obviously helped SEO, but then the user experience team was like, "Oh my gosh! Like the number of people getting to staying on the site has increased." Like, well, duh! Like it was just bizarre. As I said, a lot of fear, right? Oh, this is the way it is. It's working. We don't want to change. Um, Similar issue, a recommender. So, there's another crosslink unit that recommends other documents. And one of my business rules for clients is you don't crosslink to no index content, right? Like if we've no indexed it, we've no indexed it for a reason. Probably because it's bad, right? Um, the recommender team was continuing to link to them. They're like, they were linking to them, and once again, took a lot of convincing to say, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, these are bad documents. And they're like, yeah, but according to our system, blah, blah, blah. And they took it out finally, and suddenly the clicks on the recommender went up by like 40% or something, and they were thrilled. We were thrilled because then we weren't linking to garbage documents anymore. But that's the kind of stuff. Um, and it's nice when it works, but it's also a little bit exasperating when it's like, really, like this is the level where like if I have to convince you of this, boy, it's going to be really tough when I have to convince you, like, some other marginal thing that I think will work, but might not have nearly as direct an effect.
So you, I mean, definitely sounds frustrating. I don't empathize with you. Thankfully, in our content world, a little easier once we get going to do some of these things. But when you talk about lack of throughput, you gave the great example of like literally putting your foot down on someone. That maybe is not the technique everyone wants to should use, but what are there solutions to this? Like, what is the path forward on that? Like, beyond have some guts,
I
you know?
I have, yeah, not recommended. Like, I think I wrote that. It was like, this is not a recommended course of action because most often it'll probably get you fired. But one of the things that I'm trying to do, and I've done it with two organizations, and it's working. I won't say it's working great, but I think it's a work in progress. Engineering teams are most engineering teams will point their work, using sprint planning methodology, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21 Fibonacci sequence sort of pointing systems, which determines sort of, how much work that's going to take the engineering team to do. I've started to point SEO stories and work using sort of my own sort of impact, like, a little bit of difficulty, a little bit of impact on the business, and have essentially sort of said, look, an organization has to hit at least 30 points per quarter to really say that you have a ongoing search optimization program. And so I point the stories and then we track it and sort of see that. When you hit the numbers, generally things look pretty good so far. When you don't hit the numbers, things haven't looked good. So it is working to a certain extent to sort of incent people. And because we work with engineering so often, they understand that sort of framework of, oh, okay, yeah, you're pointing these things, and okay, if we don't get that much done, we're probably not going to see any growth in that in SEO. So I've tried doing that. I think it's tough to get buy-in, but when you do, as I said, for the two orgs that I've done it with, it's working halfway decently.
Nice. What was the name of the system? Or is it just pointing it or
Well, it's the sprint process, sprint
okay.
planning, and Scrum.
Scrum
I think, I don't
methodology?
know, Scrum. Yeah, Scrum methodology. It's, engineers will point, as I said, based on the Fibonacci sequence in terms of size. So I ran product for about a year and a half somewhere, and was pretty familiar with that. And almost every team uses it now that I work with. So just seemed like, if they can do it on their end, let's do it on our end to sort of speak their language. Like, hey, by the way, you only did, you know, uh, 13 points of SEO work this half. Yeah, you can't expect
Gains.
things to
Yeah.
go great. Yeah.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and, when you talk to people about the fact that it's a zero sum game in search, right? Someone wins, someone loses. If someone's doing more work and is out hustling you, you're probably going to lose, right? That's just sort of the way it works, particularly in a changing landscape of search where, things change. You got to adapt. And I think it's pretty clear if you're not keeping up, someone else is getting ahead.
Do you sort of touched on it with the point system. Do you ever try to quantify the impact of your changes, or is it not a worthwhile endeavor?
There are certain ones that I do. Like I know encoding URLs so that you can get uh, do well for international search. Like I know if you do that, that's probably going to get you a 10 to 15% bump in traffic. Um, I think usually there are things where I just sort of know this will produce a certain bump in traffic. Um, Correspondingly, I know that, hey, if a local pack shows up on your search result, that's 30% of the clicks are drained away from it right away, right? Um, you know, People also ask unit, that's worth, 10 to maybe even 20% drawn away from the search results. So, uh, it, I don't, I'm still looking for what works and what doesn't, but at the end of the day, I just want to see everything go up and to the right. And usually it is, like I said, it's a combination of things. I used to say it's like the new math: one plus one could equal zero, but one plus one could equal 12. Like, and so you just never know when the tipping point is. You just have to do like all of that. I think the other, it's the opposite of death by a thousand cuts. It's success through a thousand optimizations.
That's a good tagline. That should be your consulting tagline.
So I'm a big fan of sort of incrementalization. It's sort of the um, I wrote about it, but I'm a cycling fan, and the British cycling team got very, very successful. Run, I forget his name, won Olympics and road races and a whole 9 yards. And their whole thing was they did uh, everything possible to make them successful. So instead of sleeping on like weird beds at hotels when they went to races, they would actually bring
Nice beds.
beds with them that they could sleep on. In the bus where they fixed the bikes, dust was a problem. And so they painted the floor white so they could find dust and ensure that it didn't gum up the bikes. Right. And so I usually say, like, that's the one that caught my eye the most. Like, they painted the floor white, right? Like, clearly, someone's asking, like, is this really worth it? Like, really? And someone's, and they're like, hey,
Attention to detail.
every little bit is gonna matter. And so I usually say, like, what are the painting the floor white sort of projects that are on, an SEO's list, and that might be like you have links on the site that 301 to something else, and I want you to update that link so it doesn't 301. It just goes directly to the right URL. Like that's a paint the floor white, task, right? Do I think it's gonna like? Because if someone asks me like, how much traffic is it gonna bring us, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, probably none right now, but I know you have to do it, right? Like I know it matters. I know if in the scheme of things it will matter. Um, and that's the problem. Someone asking me like, yes, but how much traffic would that bring us? And I'm like, it's the wrong question. Wrong question.
Yeah, I mean, it can. I like the idea of generally estimating, and sort of sounds like you do, but there's definitely like overdoing it. We've seen those examples with clients where they're literally wanting an estimate on every single thing. And it's just hard to do that. To your point, like especially at a big organization, there's so many things moving. It's just like impossible.
Yeah, it's I mean, I always give bars like, hey, I think this will be worth, maybe a 2, 3%, 5%, 10%. Like I can generally sort of say some of those, but I always like to say, you have to do all the things. It's that idea. We're not hunting werewolves. There are no silver bullets. Like the worst thing I can ever hear from a client is like, well, tell me the 3 things that we should do that'll make the biggest difference. And I'm like, oh God. Like that's not good. Because when you say the 3 biggest things that can make a difference, that means maybe they'll do 2 of them, right? Um, uh, and for me, I'm like, I need you to do like 20 things, right? So unfortunately, one of my tasks is to just tell people to go faster. And I've gotten probably at least 4 or 5 of my clients I absolutely materially help them to move faster because I just complain. Um, why they put up with me and allow me to do that, I'm not sure.
Do you have a technique for that? I mean, every company SEO wants to get their clients to do more things. Like it sounds like you've sort of maybe it's just you have the respect that they listen to you
I
and
think that's it. It helps that when I get there, we get some successes. Usually, I'm a referral from some other partner that they're confident that they've got the right person, or I'm referred to from the VC who's like, hey, this guy helped us get this company to go. You need to use him and make sure that you follow his directions because he's going to help you get to where you want to go. So I think that might be the other reason sometimes that I have a little longer leash than potentially some others.
I mean, I think it's a great like skill set for consultants to be willing to be kind of like divisive about those things and like tell them when their shit stinks effectively because they appreciate it. It's in their best interest most of the time.
It
Yeah,
is most of the time, yeah. I mean, I I definitely set the stage for that when I engagements start.
that's good. Yeah,
I tell them that look, I'm a blunt person. I'm gonna tell you when I think whatever. And there are times, there are a couple organizations that I feel are overly political, and I'll just tell them like, hey, this is just politics is getting in the way of you actually getting work done and moving the ball forward. So I don't know what you have to do, but um, figure it out, right? Because you're trying to massage and manage up, but in the process, you're making it tougher for yourself. And I I can't pretend to know exactly how that is. I mean, I literally got out of that environment for that reason. I didn't want to play the
yeah.
politics. Uh, you know, I was very bad when someone came to me with ideas. If they were good ideas, it didn't matter who they came from. It could be from someone in customer service or it could come from the CEO. And I'd be like, that's a great idea. But if it was a bad idea, I would say that's a shitty idea. And I also didn't care if you were a founder or a CEO or whatever, and that didn't go over very well usually. So, as an employee, as a consultant, much more so.
Makes sense. So you found your sweet spot.
Yes, I
Is the
did.
story? Is the story we've learned?
Yes, absolutely.
If you find that your CEO hates you for for the ideas you shoot down, you should be a consultant. That's maybe one of the takeaways
Yes.
of this call. So shifting gears a little bit, you've mentioned that you're seeing a growing long tail in search. Can you kind of touch on that? Where and how are you seeing that? And like, what does that mean for us as SEOs?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think the long tail has been growing and is larger uh, every day at this point. Part of this is my side hustles. I have things that I've deployed that um, you know if you use the keyword tool to say how much traffic they should get. I think I did it and it was like, oh, you should get 30,000 or something a month. And I'm getting, and that's in query volume, right? Not clicks, query volume. I'm getting like more than that in clicks in a month from the same sort of set. And that's because people search in very long and more detailed ways. I think you can see that if you do any amount of Q&A work, which I have done now for the better part of 5 years with many clients. I had a client that did, I think it was 400 questions. Um, it got in a year they were getting 1 million visits off of those 400 questions, um, and the average word length of the queries according to search console was somewhere between 6 and 7 words. So there were 22 million impressions and 1 million clicks on an average word length, query length of like 6.8 words. So if that doesn't tell you like the that the long tail is pretty big, I just don't know what else there is. The other one is most head terms I find are just getting less traffic. Some of it is just search behavior. Some of it is also Google clearly wanting you to refine your search. Uh, but in one instance, Halloween costumes is probably my favorite one. Um, if you look at Google Trends, Halloween costumes as a term has been on the decline until the pandemic thing, and there's a little bump there. But in general, the slope is like every year people are less and less interested in Halloween costumes. Now, do I think that's true? No, I don't. I think people are still gaga over Halloween costumes, but they're using Halloween costumes for teenagers, Halloween costumes for couples, Halloween costumes for whatever, right? Um, and I think uh, that's a real good crystallization of like how search behavior has changed, how Google's influencing it with, the autocomplete on searches, which is pretty darn long now. The people also ask unit, which is clearly much longer queries in length. And when you do a head term, they're pretty clear. Like Google's like, you typed in furniture and they're like, WTF, right? Like, help us out. What do you want
What do
to,
you
do you
actually
want
want?
to like buy furniture? Do you want to understand how to make furniture? Do you like give us a hint, right? Um, so I think that's a real interesting one. I will say seoClarity does this thing. They're trying to figure out like the true search volume. I'm probably butchering what they call it. But if you look in the tool for something like NFL, just the term NFL, they'll be like, oh, uh, 2 million searches a month on the term NFL. And I don't know about anybody else, but that just feels wrong to me. Like, do I really think that 2 million people go to Google and type in just the words NFL? Like, are we like in 98 with Alta Vista? Like, I don't understand it, right? And so, sure enough, if you look at like seoClarity, they're like, we think it's more like 300,000. And okay, like even I think that's a little high, but that sounds a lot better than like 2 million, right? Like, okay, maybe there's still some people who maybe they're hitting the return before the autocomplete. Like, I don't know, but that feels a lot more logical to me. So between all of those things, that's where I'm seeing it. What does that mean for SEO? Um, one which I don't think anybody's going to like to hear, particularly people in the tool space. Most of the tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush, like they do not handle long tail very well, and so as long tail becomes a greater and greater component, and a lot of my clients are very long tail clients, like they just don't see that. Like there's just no way for them to. Like I don't blame them. And I like Ahrefs a lot. SEMrush, they're okay. Um, but both are gonna have problems as the long tail grows because it's just tough. Like 6, 7, 8 word queries, they're just not
Yeah.
gonna see them. Um, and so I think increasingly that will be a difficult measurement aspect for people trying to figure out sort of how that works. I think the other thing SEOs will have to adapt to is there's still sort of some post traumatic panda syndrome out there where people think that content has to be long and, you know, have to write 4,000 words and
Skyscraper it.
skyscraper page, all that sort of stuff. But uh, you know, I'll win on a term with two two sentences, right? Q&A. I mean, as long as it fulfills intent, that's all they care about. Um, so the reason why I love Q&A, you can really scale it pretty quickly if you know how to write it. You can do it really poorly and it won't work, but if you do it the right way, uh, you can write a paragraph, or like 3 sentences, and rank really well for terms and get that traffic. And that's, I mean, I do have a client in the, uh, let's see, how should I put it? Financial space, just to make it less easy to identify. This very large Q&A program generates a massive amount of traffic through it, probably 2 or 3 million a month easily, I think, to it. Uh, but the fun part is, though, when you get a large enough corpus of Q&A content, it also drives links. It becomes a citation source. And so they get, anywhere between 100 and 200 links a day right now to that Q&A corpus. Now, granted, probably 80% of those are garbage links, but, I'll take the other 20%.
We find what, like, as part of our passive link strategy, any kind of thing that someone might reference and grab one thing and like want to reference where it came, which would be a quick, what you Zach said, like, what is blank, a definition, a quick answer to something like it's very often a linkable query. So it works, for sure. Do you see, I guess two like counter thoughts to that would be, is there, I don't know how much Google is like stealing that traffic with their like quick answer boxes. I know that's sort of been going away a little bit or less prominent. And then,
Well, are we talking the featured
yeah,
snippet?
featured snippet. Yeah.
So I know there's some controversy over whether the featured snippet is good to have or bad to have. Um, I will say, how to say this. I hope you all think it's bad to have, because I want it 100% of the time.
Same. Yeah.
That's for
I mean,
sure.
we structure to get in there and it's like, what are you
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
there?
I structure it. There's featured snippet bait. Like, do you want a table? Do you want what do you want? I'll give it to you, right? Um, so I love the featured snippet. Answer boxes are a little bit of a different story. Um, I mean, famously, I think I'm pretty much on record with this. I've tweeted about it. I work with Genius. Obviously, Genius has had some issues with Google and their lyrics box. Um, that certainly is not a great thing to have, and certainly impacts traffic. So don't particularly like when other sites scrape our content and put it in that box. Not
Makes
not
sense.
fun. Yes. Um, but I would say the other one is instant answers, and this is an interesting one. A lot of instant answer content, right under instant answers, often there's a people also ask unit. Um, so if you're like, how much sugar is in a strawberry, right? And I don't even know if that's one that does it, but generally there is. And there's often a people also ask box unit right under it.
There is, you got it.
And okay, so it's not on this one, but one very similar to this. I have a client where we rank first in the people also ask unit on a term which renders that instant answer, right? And there's a 5% click through rate on the first people also ask unit. So someone's who's saying how much sugar is in a strawberry, they get their answer, but for whatever reason, they're going to look at that people also ask, and that first one, they're going to click through. Maybe they're interested. I don't know. But super interesting, tactic that, even a instant answer result can actually be a target if you know what you're doing.
Nice. The first people
Yeah.
also ask question is strawberry has high sugar, question mark. Great Google results we got going there.
Yeah, I know. Well, the people also ask unit is hilarious.
It is pretty
But
bad at times. Yeah.
it is. It's munching up a whole bunch of different terms and tries to get the grammar right, but sometimes it clearly does not.
Yeah.
And the fun part is when clients ask me, like, because one of the first things I tell them is always, the answer should always include the question. Like it's middle school English, right? Um, and they'll sometimes ask me like, "Should we have the language?" I was like, "No, if they got it wrong, don't echo that back, please. Don't."
So you mentioned something that's interesting. I've been doing more of these podcasts, and there's like trends of what I hear people mention. Are you a fan of SEO Clarity? I feel like I don't use it personally, but heard it get mentioned a few times recently.
I like seoClarity. Look, I like the tool a lot. I think he's got a good product. He's always had a good product. I think it's just been under marketed. Um,
So here we
I
are.
like a lot of what it does. Yeah, here I am. He's getting some free cred here. I do. I like it. I also like that there are times, you know, he's. All I can say is there are times when I know I've had clients go to him, and the clients will say, "This is how many words we're tracking with this other service for this amount," and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, you can't use us. We'll be way too expensive." Like he knows, like he's for a certain type of customer. Um, he thinks he's got a great product. I think he does. I think some of it is still confusing, but that's fine. Uh,
Who is he? Who is the founder of SEO Clarity, or who's?
Matul Gandhi.
Oh,
Matul
okay,
Gandhi. Uh, so good guy.
cool.
Um, and like I said, I just there are a couple things that he does with the research grid, which is very much in mind with my idea of query classes. They look for query patterns, and they basically give you all the query patterns, and that's um, I probably shouldn't promote it because it's exactly what I do all the time to find the crevices and the cracks where I can find traffic and get clients more visibility. But they do a really good job of finding all of that and then aggregating it and showing sort of what you could do and what's out there.
Nice. I'll have to check it out, and yeah, maybe they should send you a check after this, or free account at the very least.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have a really well done yearly update that you do. It's always a great read. You're a great writer. It is a bummer that you're not writing as much as you have been. So consider this a nudge to do that.
Yep. Thank you.
But you
Thank you.
published your last update a little late, 6 months late.
Whew, yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get 2022 on time? We're coming to the end of the year
Yeah,
here.
I think you will. Certainly a better year this year overall. And making some decisions to take on a little less in certain areas, refocus some efforts elsewhere. So it'll definitely be. I don't know if it'll be right in like early January, but I expect that it will be in January this year. So
Nice. So despite
yeah.
the headwinds for SEO, lack of throughput, the personal headwinds are not as there.
Yeah, no, personal headwinds, definitely got much of it was resolved. Just it was tough. Just a tough year. Um, for those that don't know my history, I had cancer at one point. I guess I still have cancer. I'm just in remission, but um, I would say I found it easier dealing with that than I was the one who was having the issue. I could overcome that. That was it. But when people close to you are struggling
Oh,
and
yeah.
you don't really have the ability to make it better, that was a whole other level. So much more difficult and made it really tough to get work done, to be honest, right? So lucky for me, most of my work is um, expertise retainers. It's really talking. It's going through roadmaps with people, working with internal SEOs, and helping them to get things, think about things the right way, and take some of the learnings that I see with other clients and across industries, and that I was able to still deliver on. It was just, anybody new who needed, like, hey, we need you to dig into this, or spend some concerted effort. and focus. Just the focus wasn't there. So focus is back.
Nice.
So now I can actually sit down and lose myself in a spreadsheet or lose myself in Search Console for 4 hours trying to figure something out
Do you still get
and get
the
it
kind
out.
of like same? I don't know if you ever got a thrill from SEO. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're a veteran. Like, yeah, are you going to be doing this for another 10 years, or are you ever going to retire? Or?
um, I think I'll probably, as I said, I mean, I'm building. Did I say it? Maybe
You have
not.
it. You said off
I,
off the record.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I have sites that I'm building, have been building, um, ideas that I've tried to give clients who were like just didn't want to do them, so I decided to do them myself. Um, those are going well. I am trying to dedicate a little bit more time to them, so that at some point I'd be able to switch over and not be working as much. But the environment that I'm in now is not a bad one. I get paid for expertise, for talking to people and telling them and guiding them through that process and helping them be successful. That's a better place. Do I want to be doing audits? No. That's a place that it's not as fun anymore. I still do get the thrill when I figure something out, for sure. Something that I can crack here, or something that I don't think people are paying attention to, that I can you know bring to a client and see them be successful. But the full on audit work is a drag. It's a lot. So that's the part that I'd probably start to get rid of, for the
Are you
most
still
part,
doing
and
some of
try
that,
and
or
move. I haven't done an audit in about 18 months now. To be honest, I start a lot of these expertise retainers with, I would say, kind of an agile audit, which is like I'll look at something and do a deep dive into a specific section, but it's not like one big chunk of like I'm gonna do this, 50-page document which is fully annotated and does
that
the
no
blah
one
blah
does
blah blah.
anything with?
Like,
Is what the lesson we learned today.
yeah, yeah. Well, that is part of it as well. Is it's tough sometimes, in this environment to be like, yeah, I'm going to give you everything that I think you should do, and then they're like, okay, thanks, all right.
Just not
It's
how
nice to
things
get
get
paid,
done.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but
It's not
but I much rather
see work.
see stuff get done and see work get done and see that company succeed.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, thankfully SEO is still fun, still a good time. I'm with you. Not probably personally wanting to do many audits these days, but the stuff that gets done and seeing the success and the growth for good companies is always a thrill.
It is. It's fun. Uh, it's always fun when you can like see something and take it from ideation, get it through a system, get it published, and see it succeed. Like that's always exciting to see some of that. So I did that with. I think I mentioned it in my year review post. Like, it took me for like 2 years to convince them to a client to do this type of page on their site, and they launched it, and it with like literally overnight, it became 60% of their total traffic to the site. Like that's the kind of stuff that you sort of look at it and you go, okay, that's why
Nice.
I do this stuff. It's fun. It's also for a good cause, which makes it doubly nice. But I think that's still the buzz of being able to find those cracks and to find the traffic go up. I still like doing that. I like having multiple clients because sometimes some clients are a little pokey, and then some clients have a little spurt of activity. So it keeps me engaged, and there's always something that I can dig
Teeth
my feet
into.
into
Yeah.
and see what's going on. Yeah.
Well, nice, AJ. This is great. We'll hold you to it. It's the end of September, so we'll look forward to that January 1st update.
You
Just
betcha.
kidding, but appreciate you coming on. And yeah, everyone follow AJ on Twitter. Are you active on LinkedIn as well, or no?
No, no, not really.
So Twitter's the
I
place.
I think Twitter's usually the place, and I'm not very active there either. But I may start to be again. We'll see. LinkedIn, I don't know. Maybe I'll get active there. Right now, it's like once a month I go in and I look at my invites and I accept or deny. So, but
So yeah, blind. I mean, if you're a newer SEO, go in the archives on blind5yearold.com. As I mentioned, AJ is a great writer and a lot of good SEO stuff that's still relevant today. I'm sure in a lot of places. So, thanks for coming on, AJ.
hey, thanks for having me. Good talk.